If you've got water in your basement right now and it's from your sump pump, this video is for you. What we're going to do in this short video is walk you through a flowchart to troubleshoot what the problem is with your sump pump. You may not need to replace your sump pump. Follow this guide before you call a plumber or before you begin replacing your pump. So most sump pumps are sealed with a lid. And the first thing that we're going to do here is everything that we can before we go get our hands dirty, possibly go into the sump, maybe even remove the pump. So the very first thing to do is to check the power. These sump pumps are known for tripping breakers. There's a lot of places where you have to install the sump pump on a GFCI, and perhaps a GFCI tripped. Making sure it's plugged in and checking the cabling. If worse comes to worse, take an extension cord and try and plug it into another outlet that you know works somewhere else in the basement. If you deem that power is not the problem, then the next thing to do is let's open up the sump. This means you may have to take off some bolts. You may have a radon system. I'm not saying it's pretty, but you definitely have to get into the sump to figure out what is wrong with it. After you open the sump, let's see what you find. There's going to be one of three conditions as far as the pump goes. It's either not going to be running, it's going to be running, or it's going to be cycling on and off, meaning it runs for about 5 or 10 seconds and then it stops. So let's handle that scenario first because it's kind of the easiest. Your check valve is the thing that keeps, when the pump pushes water up the column of pipe, the check valve is the thing that keeps that water from falling back down into the pump. Usually if a check valve fails, it's going to fail in the open position, meaning the pump is going to push the water up the pipe and the water is going to fall right back down. So that is what causes the pump to kick on and then stop, and then the water falls back down into the sump and the pump activates and kicks on again to push it out. A lot of times you can fix this very easily. The best temporary fix is knock on it with a wrench and see if you can get the flap to fall. Also, you can unplug the pump, take your check valve out, and look inside. This check valve is nothing more than a rubber flap that opens and closes when water goes through it. Next, let's take a look if the pump's off. The million-dollar question if the pump is off is, what is the water temperature? If you have hot or warm water, it got hot from the pump. And you can see here in green, there's about 4 different variations of things that could produce that. But 80% chance it's a clogged or a frozen discharge line. If the pump can't push the water, it just sits there and works. And ultimately, the pump has a temperature sensor inside of it. They call it a thermal overload. And when the pump gets too hot, that overload opens. And that's what actually stops the pump from burning itself up. If it's 20 degrees outside, or if it was 20 degrees outside 3 days ago, then chances are your discharge line is frozen. And if your discharge line is frozen, the pump can't eject. So you got a couple options there. One, go out, look at it. If it's something that you can clear yourself, meaning you just have a big wad of ice coming out of the end of the sump pump discharge, great. You know, all this pipe is only PVC. If you need to, cut it and then go get yourself a $2 sleeve from Home Depot and put that back into the pipe and repair it after the problem's been solved and you have the water out of your basement. Pumps can also clog on the infeed, and you'll know this. If you will have to disconnect the pump from the pipe, and you'll have to flip it over and look at it. Particularly cast iron pumps, they have a lot of rust. There's a lot of crap that can go down into the bottom of the sump and get sucked up into that pump. And a lot of times it can be enough to keep the pump from actually sucking water through it. I cheat on this one. I have a pool. I take my sump pump once every summer, and I dip it into the pool, and I get it cleaned out. If you have an outside sump pump, they're absolutely nasty, the stuff that's going to come out of there. There's a couple different great videos I saw on YouTube about putting a weep hole into your PVC pipe on the discharge of the pump. This is nothing more than like an 1/8 inch drill bit into the pipe. What can happen is inside the pump, particularly if the water level went down really low lately, if you've had the pump out, you can get an air bubble inside the pump. And by putting a small drill hole on the discharge line of the sump pump, you can allow that air to come out. Now, counter argument is that, yeah, and you're going to blow a little bit of water outside of that, through that hole every time the pump runs. And that's just not the end of the world to me. So I don't worry about that. There is also the very rare scenario where your check valve has gotten stuck in the closed position. And I seriously would be, I doubt that's the situation that you have. But again, you can pull the check valve off of there. You can take a pen or a pencil and slide it through the check valve and watch that little flap go back and forth. If the water is not warm, immediately go check your float switch. Float switches are one of the #1 reasons why sump pumps have problems. There's a lot of variations of float switches. Some of them are integrated into the pump. Other ones are piggyback style, where the pump plugs into the float switch and the float switch plugs into the wall. And you can have a vertical float switch or a flotation type. But in either case, if you have a piggyback float switch, pull it out, plug the pump directly into the outlet and see if it runs. If it does, the float switch is your problem. Also, you may be able to see that wires from the float switch have caught on other wires or hit something else. Maybe you've got a backup system, maybe it hit something from the backup system. Maybe it's just lodged somewhere. But definitely check the float switch and see if that is your problem. If in the last scenario your pump is running constantly and the water is not hot, look at the inflow to the pump, because probably that pump is just undersized. In other words, it can't keep up. So this is the scenario where you just got a deluge of rain for the last 36 hours and the pump is just working, and the water is just not clearing out of there. If that's the case, you can A, upsize your pump, or B, you can go get a small utility pump or something like that and help your sump pump out and help get some of the water out of there. If the pump is running and the water is warm or hot, then you're back to the air bubble or the clogged or frozen discharge. You might say, well, why did that appear on here twice? And the reason is because of that thermal overload that the pump is going to run until the overload trips. When the water cools back down, the overload's going to allow the pump to run again. So you can have some of these fault modes in both situations. So if you enjoyed this video or if it was helpful to you, there is prevention for you. And the prevention, quite simply, please look at a sump pump monitor. You can get a discount on your insurance. We make a very good one, the LevelSense Pro. These things will send you a text message, even if you're at the airport in Bangkok, and let you know that you have a problem in your sump pump. Our product monitors the humidity in the basement. It can even sniff out if you have water entering the basement from someplace else. It's got a mountain of great features.